So recently I heard a rumor that you don't need to hire a real estate agent to help find you a home. Hailey, is this true?
Absolutely true.
How can that be true?
I'm going to ruffle some feathers, but it is 2024, and any consumer who's looking for a house can quite literally log on to Zillow and put in a search criteria and scroll until they find what they like. That's just how it is.
So, okay. So what's the point of hiring a real estate agent then if I'm a buyer?
There are so many intricacies that come with purchasing real estate. So the real reason why you actually hire a real estate agent is not to help you find a home, but it really is to help you negotiate and help you handle all of those intricacies, because problems will come up and your agent is there to handle those very swiftly with all of the experience that they have.
Got it. Okay. So when I first meet you as my realtor, I'm going to give you what I'm looking for and you'll set me up on a search?
Correct.
Got
Absolutely. It. So we'll do what's called a buyer consultation, where I will meet with you and discuss your budget, where you want to land in your budget, but also your wants and needs in finding a house. And I will then turn that into a home search that's tailored just to you and your needs. So you can actually say goodbye to Zillow, because this is tailored and you'll get automatic updates from this home search for homes that are only in your criteria. So you will not need to reset constantly when you go into Zillow in order to find what you actually want.
Yeah, as a lender, I get that all the time. What about this one? What about this one? I'm like, that doesn't meet anything that you were talking about. We can look at it certainly, but it doesn't meet your requirements. That one's a mobile, or that one's a modular, or that one is whatever. So that search engine, they get set up, and then the buyer says, I want to go see one.
Correct. And even though I say that you don't hire a real estate agent to find you a home, I do still send homes to my clients 100%. I really do. I would say that there's probably a 50-50 ratio between the home buyers who purchase a house that they found versus a house that I found and sent to them.
Okay. So if I found a home and you're going to help me negotiate the offer, so do you help me decide how much I should offer on a house, or how does that work? Definitely.
A big part of actually finding your home, going under contract, is the offer and making your offer stand out, especially in this market because it is so challenging. So having a really good buyer agent on your side to call the listing agent to understand the seller situation and what they might need in your offer, but also build rapport with that listing agent, because agents want to work with good agents.
Absolutely.
They really do.
Yeah, it's so true, especially when it comes down to, I do this a lot. I've been doing this for a long time. And one of the things as a lender I run into constantly is one agent doesn't know what the hell they're doing. It's pretty clear. And the buyer's looking to their lender for advice on how do I fix this? I mean, it's coming back that we need a new roof on this property. We still want the house. How do I pay for that roof? And if you have one agent that doesn't know what they're doing, it can be a disaster.
Absolutely.
Sometimes if you have a good buyer that wants to buy that house and you have a great seller that wants to sell that house, the two realtors, if they were good at negotiating, you can work it out. There's still ways to make that deal go through. Because let's face it, most of the homes that are on the market right now need some work.
They do. A lot of them do. Even when they're super maintained and everything is up to date, there's still always going to be something to maintain with a house. Owning a home is a responsibility, and there's always going to be upkeep and expenses that come with that. So it's really important to keep those in mind. Now, when you are making your offer, I'm not here to tell you what you should be offering on the house. I'm here to run comps and tell you logistically and realistically where I see it also appraising, especially if you do need financing.
Got it.
Because it will need to appraise in order to reach closing. So that's really important. But the biggest question that I am always pressing my buyers to answer when making offers is focus on the payment, not how much over asking that you are bidding.
That's so true, because I do get that as well. People get hung up on, I don't want to pay $5,000 more for this house. Well, hold on. $5,000 more, but you get a new roof, or $5,000 more and you win the deal, and you find that math is maybe $30 more a month. That might still be within your budget.
Even beyond that, it has nothing to do with that. More to do with the fact that there is a method to the madness in most of these cases, and a good listing agent is going to list a property at the lowest low end of market value.
Right. So don't get confused here. We're not talking about overpaying for a house.
No.
I don't think it's acceptable to somebody to overpay for a house. That said, there are times where the listing agent will deliberately underprice that house to drive prices back up to where they actually should be, but get more people interested in that particular property.
Correct. And it has more to do with getting their seller seller client top dollar, which doesn't always equate to the highest offer. It's top dollar,
Right.
but also the best terms, the most solid buyer, because the ultimate goal is to get to closing.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because when we hear a solid buyer, it almost seems like, well, unless you're perfect, you don't count, or your offer is not going to count. That's not always true. With a good agent, you're going to be able to simplify the offer so that a seller, when they're reviewing all these offers, it doesn't look overcomplicated. It's very easy to understand what their bottom line is going to be.
Absolutely. And you hire a real estate agent to help you buy real estate, to walk you through all of that, so you understand everything all the way from A to Z. And I actually just put in an offer this morning on a property where it had a rolled roof installed around 2010, and rolled roofs, their life expectancy is a lot different than an actual truly shingled roof. Yeah. So that was a concern of hers. So a part of making that offer was making it make sense with planning to potentially replace that roof, whether it's another rolled roof or a shingled roof. And I was able to send her some really valuable educational links to learn more about rolled roofs, because you hear a lot about shingled roofs and not metal roofs, but not a lot about rolled roofs or the other options that there are for roofing. So it's a very I don't want to say super uncommon, but for her, it was uncommon.
Yeah, and we don't want to get too much of a tangent on inspections, but when you keep in mind what type of roof it has, they could also be different costs than insurance too. So
definitely
something to keep in mind. But again, without going down the different types of homes out there, it's real important to know that when your realtor's talking to you about these things, that they're actually explaining it and they understand, they have some knowledge and experience with that, because too many out there have no clue what we're even talking about right now.
And my job isn't to steer you into it or to steer you out of it. It's to equip you with the knowledge and the information to make a decision for yourself. And I was able to get her quotes for, okay, this is how long this roof should last.
Yep.
It could last a little bit less, a little bit longer. This is what it would cost to replace it with another rolled roof. This is what it would cost to replace it with a true shingled roof with a longer life expectancy. So she had all of those answers going into it, which I know was super helpful, but having a good real estate agent to clear that up for you either before or while you're writing your offer will also make you feel more comfortable in your offer. Yeah. And will result in you being a more solid buyer, because you know all the questions. Right. And they've been answered.
You have to be, as a buyer, prepared for this ahead of time. Too many times where none of this gets explained. You find the right property, or you think you find the right property, and then they give you a call, or I don't want to use you as an example because you're great at what you do, but too many times I'm sitting here in the background watching somebody go, now they're explaining to me the following things, and what's happened is they lose out because they're not timely in their offer. Nope. You take too long. You can't hesitate. The old saying, you can't steal in slow motion. We just joked about that before the show, but you can't steal in slow motion, which means you're going to have competition out there in some areas. The good properties, the ones that are priced right, they're going to attract multiple attention, and you've got to be on your game. You've got to know this, be prepared, be pre-approved, and know all of this ahead of time. If you're not doing that, you're going to lose.
And how do you do that? Hire a good real estate agent and a good lender.
That's right. It goes without saying that you really have to hire the best, but not knowing what the best is, there's no frame of reference. If you're a first-time buyer in particular, somebody who's answering the phones, that seems great. And that's half the battle as it is. When you get your really good ones, they're a little busy. But answering the phones is wonderful. But if the information you're getting on the other side of it is bad, or they don't know how to negotiate, can we talk about that a little bit? Negotiating.
Absolutely.
Because
I love a good negotiation.
That's, I'd say, 98% of what's going on right now. Because like you said before, I can find a house that I'm interested in, but I can't seem to be the number one winner all the time. So
this market where we're at right now has been the most exciting for me, because we are actually negotiating between buyer and seller, even with competing offers and everything. Whereas you weren't seeing a whole lot of negotiating happening in 2020 through even 2023. It wasn't happening a lot. Mid to end of 2023. Yeah, sure. But right now the market is hot and it's popping, but almost every transaction, even going into it with offers, we have had some pretty hefty negotiations.
I'm gonna put Hailey on the spot here. So let's role play a little bit.
Okay.
She's not prepared for this. So I want to put in an offer on a house. I just found a house. You and I have toured the house together. You're my realtor, and we've had a conversation about what maybe the value is at that point. And I want to go in at maybe $10,000 under asking. Talk to me a little bit about how that might how that might fly?
It's going to depend on a couple of things. And the first thing is, how long has the property been on the market? If it's a brand new listing, it's going to be a lot harder to get you under asking.
So it's been on the market 4 days.
Property. 4 days, it's still a new listing. That would be, my first thing would be to call the agent and ask them, hey, how much interest are you getting? Are you setting an offer deadline? And that will tell me a lot about, they have a deadline, they have offers in hand. If they're already in a multiple offer situation, your odds of getting the property for $10,000 below asking are very, very slim to none.
Got it.
To put it in a nice way. So if you're looking to negotiate a deal on price, you're going to want to look at properties that have been on the market for a while, because nothing is wrong with them. They were just overpriced to begin with. So they're sitting. That is the perfect opportunity for you to go in and make an offer either at or below asking price. And I actually recently negotiated something for one of my clients where we got in just above asking on their dream home. They're selling their house that they've now outgrown to move into a larger home that is their dream home and their forever home. And we were able to get them in just over asking with $24,000 in seller concessions. So their closing costs are being fully paid, and their rate is being bought down.
That's pretty amazing, because that's I don't see a lot of that right now. Now, seller concessions, for anyone who doesn't know what that means, it means the seller can contribute towards closing costs. And each program that the buyer is using for financing is going to have a particular limit on how much they can actually get, how much the seller can contribute. It can only cover the real closing costs. We can't add things in to try to get some cash back. It's legitimate, consistent closing costs. Consistent, it's not the right word, but the traditional closing costs that the lender charges. Now, each program is going to be different in how much you can do, and having the ability to negotiate that much is pretty awesome, because as a buyer, the number one thing that happens, you say, all right, I know some of these houses need work, and I'm going to have roughly anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000, maybe even $15,000 in closing costs, which are everything, not your down payment. Now we're talking about just the state transfer tax, title insurance, prepaid interest, tax and insurance, escrows, all that fun stuff. That's all third party bills.
The true cost of getting a mortgage.
That's right. So a lot of people don't factor that into it as well. So it's getting harder and harder these days to negotiate getting seller to pay closing costs or a seller concession. Again, sellers are limited in what they can cover. And if you were able to negotiate that much, I would say that that's pretty impressive.
And I don't want to go on a tangent on this, but I do want to say this and just leave it there, and we can do a new episode on it. But that is also why, if you are looking to sell your house, it is very, very important that you choose very carefully who you hire to market and sell your property.
It's so true, because I just had an agent say to me, you can't get closing costs these days. Don't even try.
Yes, you can.
What? So again, where I was going with that is buyers are purchasing a home and they have closing costs, but they then find out they need to do some repairs to a house. No big deal. They still want it. But where's that money going to come from? So having the ability to not have to pay your closing costs and keep that cash to make that immediate repair or update, sometimes just cosmetic things you want to make it to look prettier.
And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of incredible real estate agents, especially in Maine, and I know a lot of them. I really do. And it's really nice and refreshing to work with them. But there are also a lot of agents out there who, like, it's very clear that they just are not doing highest and best for their clients. They're sending ghost offers with no phone call, with no text to follow up, no call to see what the seller needs, what the situation is, nothing at all. That is not in your best interest at all.
Right.
It's not, because especially if you're tailoring your offer to an offer that works for you, but it's also going to work to the seller's needs. It is a win-win situation. And when you're negotiating for your clients, it's a very fine line in negotiation. And you have to understand that when you're thinking of a negotiation, it's how are we going to create a win-win situation? It's not winning the negotiation. There is no winning in a negotiation. And there are agents who think that. And I just want to beat you. It's not a competition in who can negotiate better. It's literally, how can we create a win-win situation for your client and my client and make their dreams come true.
So well said, because I'm back in I'm just a lender. I'm on the background here when I'm watching these negotiations take place. And I get so frustrated because it seems like two people trying to be right.
100%.
It's not about being right. I have to get the best for my seller. Well, are you really doing the best for your seller if the buyer now walks away?
Yep.
Maybe. maybe sometimes if the other side's just being difficult and they want things that are not reasonable, but that is such a brilliant example, because I deal with that every day, and I watch deals fall apart every day because the agents don't know how to negotiate.
They don't. And it's also not always the agent, it's also the buyers. It is. And if you are a buyer and you are listening to this, I want you to really think about this. It's so important who you hire as a buyer agent, because they're going to know how to negotiate on your best behalf. And you have to trust them to do that and be very clear on what's important to you and what you are and are not okay with. And that will help them negotiate on your behalf. What you don't want to do is have a mindset of how can I win? Because that is the fastest way to have a deal fall apart.
It's the fastest way to lose.
Literally. It really is. And I've had quite a few come to Jesus conversations where I'm like, listen, I understand, but this is $5,000. Do you want to make your wife happy and have her dream home, or lose it for $5,000?
Or husband.
Yes, that too.
I get it.
And it's just putting it all into perspective. Like, is winning this negotiation truly worth losing out on the possibilities that property has to offer? Because if you're telling me that it's your dream home and it's all that you ever wanted, $5,000 more over 30 years, especially if you're doing financing,
right,
it's not that deep.
Well, let's be honest right now with ourselves that when you say dream home, a lot of people are not finding their dream home. They're settling for something, which is what creates a lot of that. And we can't go into today with time restrictions on.
I hate the word programs. Settling. I hate the word settling, and I do not allow it.
Yeah.
I don't allow it.
You don't have to settle.
No.
Even if, here's where I'm going with this, with the teaser alert for our upcoming show. I want to talk about purchase plus improvement products out there without going into the product as much. But there are loan programs out there that allow you to get additional funds for making repairs. Again, that's a whole other show. But what we wanted to say here is that you're not necessarily going to find the dream home, but you could make it into the dream home.
100%.
Turn it into a house you want.
Not just that, but I think it's really important. And I actually am working with a client now who is seeing this come to fruition, which is absolutely amazing. She bought a house 2.5 years ago with me. I was her buyer agent, and now selling her house and buying her next house. And she was buying at a really tough time. It was 2022. So the market was at really high, really competitive. It was insane. And she had that typical first time home buyer budget in the price point of $250 to $325. That's a challenging price range to be in. It's a very healthy budget. It is a good budget to find a great quality house, but it is a challenging budget if you do not have the proper real estate agent fighting for you and with you. And I remember telling her, and she even told me this recently, she was like, you literally told me, don't settle on the house, but know that this house is going to be your stepping stone to your dream home. Your first house is not going to be your dream home. That is not realistic for most people. Unless you come from money, or, mom and dad have a hefty down payment to lend to you, which is amazing.
I don't want to crush anybody's dreams here. That's not what I'm saying. But I remember my first home. It was in Westbrook on Harrisburg Avenue in Westbrook, Maine. And we paid, I'm going to date myself here. It was in the mid 90s. We paid $68,000 for the house. I've talked about this on previous shows that I've done, but that home I sold less than 2 years later. Thought it was my dream home. Never going to move. Sold it in 2 years. But I tripled what I made on it, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but that enabled me to actually build a brand new house after. And again, I thought it was my dream home. We're never going to leave here. This is amazing. And very quickly realized, holy crap, look how much equity has built in that home just from me putting in sweat equity. I didn't put a whole lot of money into that house.
Nope. My first house was a $40,000 bank-owned condo.
Really?
Yes, that my boyfriend and I bought. We renovated it almost completely, like gutted the bathroom and everything. It was nuts. And lived in it for 2 years. It didn't have outdoor storage. It was small, but it was great. It was a really great place to be. And it got us into our next home.
Right.
It did.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to find a home like that right now in Maine for that price. Well, maybe you can get one from IKEA.
With the right agent, the right situation, you might be able to, but you're going to need to put some,
that's true.
some work into it.
But that's the idea behind this. So if you buy a home, here's one of my favorite things to tell people when they call me and say, hey, we were going to buy this home. We're backing out of it because the septic system failed. How many times have you had something like that happen, or the roof failed? And I talked to him.
Negotiate a new tank installed.
Yes, I've looked at him like, oh, this is great news.
I just did that.
Why is this great news? When I flip a property, I love it when the inspection comes back and the septic's failed. Because you know what? I've had inspections where it passes, and then it fails a year later.
Let's talk reality for a hot second when you're doing your inspections. This is why who you hire as an agent when you're buying a house is so important. And this is why you don't hire me to find you a house. You hire me for literally everything else. When it comes to financing, any traditional USDA, FHA, VA, conventional, any government-backed loan is going to require that there be a functioning septic system if you're on private sewer, a functioning heating system, and all of those things. If any of those things are not working, you cannot close.
With the exception of the purchase plus improvement that I keep teasing people with.
Correct. But a traditional loan, you can't close anyways. The seller wants to close, the septic has failed. Okay, replace the septic.
Right. I hear it all the time.
And you can renegotiate.
We'll have to go conventional. Going conventional doesn't make inspections, particularly if they're health and safety issues or it keeps the home from not being habitable, that you have to repair those items.
Now, there are some issues that cannot be negotiated, i.e. remember the well that we dealt with.
Yes. Tell us.
Okay, so I got buyers under contract on a property. This was actually last year. They ended up buying a totally different house after 3 months of trying to negotiate and figure it out with the sellers. Yeah. Poor sellers. Anyways, they had replaced a dug well with a drilled well, and they hired a company to do it. But that company, because the lot size wasn't big enough, required a variance in order to install the well.
Right.
They did not get a variance to install the well, and the well was way too close to the septic tank, which is a big issue because you do not want
the septic tank is where literally that was. Yeah.
You do not want your well to be too close to your septic tank, because if something happens with your tank, your well water
it's going to get contaminated.
Gross.
Yeah, nasty.
Yucky. We don't want that. And so we kept extending and trying to negotiate and figuring it out. And we were just at the mercy of the state and everything. And it ended up not working out. Like, some things can't be negotiated.
Even the lot on that one was so small that even if you could get a new one approved, it was going to not meet government financing requirements, because we would have to be within a certain number of feet.
100, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It has to be 100 feet, and the state will allow you on an FHA. FHA will allow going down to 75 feet, and the lot was 50 feet. If I remember correctly, there's just not enough room.
And I was familiar with this variance issue, and the listing agent was not, which that's not the issue, because it's one of those things that you wouldn't know about it until you came across, like, having to deal with it. Right. And I've had to deal with variance issues about probably 8 times in my career, so I'm very well versed in it. And this definitely enhanced that experience in that specific area. But I knew from the beginning, and I made the listing agent and sellers aware immediately. And it ultimately just came down to my buyers were not going to pay to keep their rate locked just to wait and see what was going to happen.
No, we were extending, and it just became, the good news is it did give them the ability to, in the background, start shopping again and keep looking at what might come on the market. Yep. But what happens at that point, the time kills all deals, right?
It does.
The more time that's going by, the more they're looking at other properties, the more they're falling out of love with that property. And if it hadn't been for that well, it was the perfect property for them. You 100%. Found them the right one. They were very happy with it.
Well, it's funny because they actually bought a house that was actually even better, which is crazy.
That's also true.
Not even 2 weeks later, because they hired the right agent.
Who was that?
But no, it's just, there is a lot to it. And I think when you're in that situation where you can't negotiate, your agent needs to be protecting. How can I protect my buyer and their earnest money deposit and all of these things so that they are pretty much unscathed coming out of this situation, so we can go on to the next.
And I think it's so important to keep that in mind when you are shopping, is that the right negotiator is going to know when do we continue to keep negotiating and when is it time to just cut our losses and move on to another property. Because again, we do see this happen a lot, where you'll miss the opportunities that are out there too, because you're hanging on to something it's just not there.
Nope. The other piece of it is that I like to call myself on the side that I'm working with buyers, but also with sellers. My real job is marketing. That's it. That's all it is. Because when it comes to getting my buyers' offers accepted, I'm marketing you. I'm calling the agent and I'm marketing you as to why they should push for your offer to be accepted. because I'm marketing myself. I'm making them love me and my energy, and know that there's gonna be an agent on the other side who's going to help them bring it to closing. And if there are any issues, we are in it together to resolve it. But also, I'm hyping you up. I'm hyping every part of your offer up.
Now, see, in my role, Steve, what do you do? You're a lender. So you just get me alone. I'm like, I think I'm a counselor, a psychiatrist, and I do a lot.
You can add that to my list, too.
It's so true, because you would want this to be very mathematical and very logical, and there's so much emotion that goes into making a home purchase. It's incredible. When
you work with us, we truly are here for you. I mean, just last week, I had a buyer client who's also... a seller client and buyer client, so it's a home sale contingency, call me because she was questioning everything, because family will make comments, and they love you. It's all out of love. They want what's best for you, but they don't always know what you want and what feels right to you, and that's totally fine. And they'll say things, especially grandparents, because they bought last most often than not a long time ago, and the market was nowhere near what it is now. So they'll sometimes say things that get in your head a little bit, and if you are already a little bit of an anxious person, that'll cause you to spiral a little bit. So I had one of those buyers, and she called me, and we talked for an hour, and I really did have my psychologist hat on.
You bring out the black couch. And
yes, and I mean, if we had her here with us today, she would tell you that I did not steer her in any direction, but I made her feel better.
You can't. We built our careers on being educators in the industry. Speaking of education, you mentioned something a few minutes ago, home sale contingency. Tell our listeners what that is.
So if you currently already own a house that you are living in, and you need to buy a house because either your house is too big, your house is too small, and you just really need to upgrade or downgrade, whatever it might be for your situation, a home sale contingency is a situation that allows you to go and buy your next house. But in order to do that, you need to sell your current house. So the only way that those properties can actually close and go through are if the contingency of you selling your house is met, and the contingency of you buying your next house is met. And typically we're closing on both properties back to back on the same day.
Yeah, which is a bit of a dance.
It is a dance. I have 4 closings for next month. Well, I have more than that, but 4 of them are home sale contingencies.
Right. I have a lot of those.
It's a domino effect.
It's a lot. And there was a while there during, not even during COVID, but towards the tail end of what if it's even over, but with COVID, that we saw almost no contingencies on that, because sellers wouldn't even entertain an offer if you had a house to sell. And that's kind of gone away now. You can, if you have a house to sell, you can time it where the buyer's not going to purchase or not going to move in. You're not going to get kicked out until you're able to move into your new home or close on it. Not always, but
this is why, again, you don't hire me to find you a house. You hire me for everything else. And when you hire the right buyer agent and you need a home sale contingency, this is so important. This is the most important thing I will say today, actually, because they're becoming more popular. More people are having to sell their house to then upgrade or downgrade.
Right.
And when you're doing a home sale contingency, you need your buyer agent to call the listing agent and let them know what they're doing to market your property.
Right.
That includes hiring a professional to do the photography and the videography, listing at a competitive sale price, making the property shine against the rest. Because gone are the days where exposure. What is exposure? You put a listing into the MLS and it's syndicated to every other realtor site.
Right.
There's no need for exposure. There's really need to set your property apart from every other listing that's on the MLS.
Right.
That's what it is. And if you're building that trust and telling them that, hey, I know this is a big ask. I understand that there's a big risk in your seller accepting this home sale contingent offer. However, this is what we are doing. We are ready to hit the market next week. We have photography lined up. We are hiring out for professionals. We are listing competitively. I know it's going to go quick. We're doing everything that we possibly can. And that has worked amazingly for my clients who needed that home sale contingency. So that is most of the reasons why you don't hire a real estate agent to find your house.